So welcome everybody to DealerTrack Tuesdays. This is obviously recorded, so anybody that is in the room, please be aware that this is a recorded podcast on Clubhouse, and it's going to be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the airwaves out there for everybody. Today we have a really special guest, one of my favorite people on Clubhouse, Kyle Mountsier from the Nelson Automotive Group and from the Contagious podcast, is really a game changer in my book. Was a keynote speaker at Digital Dealer. Very, very innovative. Extremely passionate about the automotive space. I love his passion on many levels. And kind of a kindred soul in the creative space. So Kyle, welcome and thank you for being on the podcast, man.
What's up, sir? I didn't know this was a live podcast. So
Yeah. So we'll talk today about the post-mortem on the CRM. I know you guys just went through a CRM change, so we wanted to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Kind of lessons learned, best practices, things that you guys went through in the process, how you went through the selection process of picking a new CRM versus an old one. Kind of what can you guys. What are your expectations to perform with the kind of the retooling of the organization? So kind of wanted to start out with kind of my first question was what was the thing that kind of propagated the change on in the organization side? And if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, our big desire kind of starting a little over a year ago was we were just looking at what we were asking our people to do on a daily basis, specifically our sales staff, and we were going, how many places are we asking them to log in, and how many different things are we requiring of them, from like just a pure practice standpoint to engage with customers, engage with their daily tasks, reports, all that type of stuff. And we were looking to streamline that at any place, right? Okay. So we just started looking at where can we streamline, create efficiencies, at a very simple level, reduce logins, and be able to kind of create a business structure that's enjoyable to live within from an employee perspective. Because if we can do that, then we can serve our customers better. So that's been a big desire across variable and fixed ops for us is figuring out where those inefficiencies lie and where we can allow tech to meet those inefficiencies.
So were you guys mainly looking for that one pane of glass experience that if you were, a BDC member or somebody in sales staff, that you were logging into the CRM and basically working everything of your day-to-day job out of that one kind of platform? Or is that kind of the objective that you guys had?
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, that would be the case, right? And so the closer we can get to that, the more it's one central source of truth for them. It's one place to go. And we knew we've known going in, and we know, even into the future, like it's not going to be a practical reality, to do that, from a single place, but we can get enough under one roof. And make it easy to use. I say this all the time. We in the automotive industry, we do this thing where it's like, hey, we're going to take this really, really awesome college graduate that we just moved into a sales environment, and they just got out of college, where they were expected to buy an Apple computer when they got in. They did everything on their phone. They built business strategies and understand project management tools because of their business degree that they got, or communications degree, or anything like that. And then we sit them down in front of a Dell computer that's 8 years old at the dealership and say, so this is Reynolds. To get forward, you hit the arrow button, and to get backward, you hit S, and then J goes to this back screen, and they're like, what just happened to me, right? And so we've got to find tech that meets the expectation of the people that we're attempting to attract and retain.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you see sometimes, if you're in a lot of dealerships, you see an F&I manager that's been in the organization for 40 years that can fly through Reynolds so quickly that Reynolds can't keep up with them, right? That they know the F3 keys, and they're enter down, up, down, sideways, and Reynolds can't even keep up with how fast they're going. And they've memorized the keystrokes to be efficient. And you put a millennial or just a Gen Z, not even a millennial for that case, a Gen Z guy in front of that system, and they're going to lose their minds. They've been dealing with an iPad for half of their life. My kid, I've got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they know how to use an iPad before they could read. It's just, that's a really good point, that it's almost impossible to, you're doing them a disservice to putting them in front of an antiquated tool of that capacity. So how did you guys integrate, kind of the new school with the old school and get buy-in across the team to say, hey, this is the new way of doing business? We still have some people that are used to the old way of doing business. How do you marry those two things and get buy-in on the team? How did that happen?
Yeah, so luckily we just have a practice of making them always change, which is maybe not always the best thing. No, so just from a group perspective, like, we went through a CRM change 3 years ago. We went through a massive process change 2 years ago. We hire people with the expectation that things may change, and that's probably for the better. And so there's kind of this culture around being open to that type of stuff, especially from a technology perspective or a process perspective. And so we maybe we're ahead of the curve on that, just because we've created that culture, especially in the last 3 to 4 years. And that's definitely thanks to, Mr. Nelson, Chad, Brandon, the people that are the leaders in our company that are really, saying, hey, look, if we're always going to be on the cutting edge of stuff, we have to be willing to be able to be flexible. And so there's a culture there. But then from like a really distinct level, when the executive team knew that we were headed down this path of changing CRM, we intentionally brought in people across the spectrum in our variable staff, so our sales staff. So managers, BDC managers, even salespeople, prior to signing any contracts, to do demos and give us feedback. So that there was two things happening. One, if there was anything we missed because maybe we're not in it every single day, that they were able to raise our awareness for it. And then two, so that if we were, and we did end up moving forward, that they could also be like, kind of the champions of it, saying, hey, this is something that we've already seen. We believe in it. We're ready to go. Come along with us. Right. And that was a really cool thing to experience. And something that we missed on a large technology we did 2 years ago, that I think in the first few weeks has really given us a lot of horsepower in this change management.
Yeah. I mean, you hit of, I guess, like the 6 best practices of change management and new technology implementation. Those are the 2 most critical ones, right? Is like bring the team in early to help you make the decision, and then get buy-in and champions from those guys, right? Because the worst thing that can happen is that this top-down push something down everybody's throats. They don't necessarily understand why they're doing something, and then you're going to get pushback at every single level, and they're going to almost vie for it to fail at that change, kind of the change resistance that they have. And culturally, that says a lot about your organization. I mean, was it always like that, or is that something that you guys have learned through pane, or just kind of, is everybody reading Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, or like how did you guys get good at that? Because that's not something that happens naturally.
Yeah, no. So from a technology perspective, that's really the first time that we've done that. And that was just from learning in the past, right? Some technologies, it's maybe easier because they're kind of tertiary to kind of go, hey, we're inserting this. This is the process change. This is what we're going to do. You get buy-in from a few people, but this is such a big wholesale change that we recognized as a leadership team that we needed to do that. And so, because when we went through the last time we changed CRM, that didn't happen. And the heartburn was so dramatic for those first couple months, that because nobody was bought in to the change. And so we just knew going into this that was a necessary part of what we were going to do. And honestly, like from an executive team level, it took us 9 months to make this decision. So it wasn't like something we were, 1 month we were like, hey, we saw this new thing. Let's try it. Great demo. Change, we took a lot of time to research. We probably took, over 6 or 7 hours worth of demos and asking questions, and really dove into the product, how the change was going to happen, what it was going to impact from a business continuity perspective. We asked all those questions, and so we took our time, which was hard, but also good at the same time.
Yeah, that's a lot of people kind of see the new shiny object and jump towards that. I mean, I really applaud your guys' organization because of taking the time, the diligence to go through that monotonous process of seeing 17,000 demos, distilling that down to 3 products that you think that you can use, then going down to 2, and then going down to 1, and asking all the questions, and then going through the hard process of doing that. And I bet that your propensity to change in the future will be a lot less because you're so committed to this working, to this new CRM working, and you're so bought into the process that you're going to find workarounds to it's like almost like an evolutionary shift in the organization, rather than it being, kind of this new shiny object that's going to pull the organizations, like pushing the organization towards this change that's going to change the whole ecosystem of how the organization works. I mean, that's pretty innovative. Like, if I see a lot of dealers out there and they don't necessarily take those precautions to make this change and take it with this level of seriousness. Like, it speaks a lot for your leadership, and it speaks a lot about, the organizational culture, and like, how did that shift happen? I'm really interested in like understanding, from the ownership perspective and the executive team, when did the click happen that they started taking this really, really seriously, this change management or, implementation?
Yeah, I mean, that was probably 8, 9, maybe years ago, when we made our first major shift in the way that we do business, specifically on the variable side, really looking at, communicating from a place of why. Communicating from a place of our core values. So we got really diligent with over communicating core values, during onboarding, during meetings, and that being the communicative culture instead of, and so like even employee reviews, 75% of the employee review is on employee characteristics, not performance.
Oh, wow.
Right. So it's all the way through the organization is that, culture, employee characteristics, core values, are paramount to performance. And so when you have a culture like that from the leadership in our organization, it's a lot easier to say, okay, when we are going through change management, that we've filtered it through these core values. We have, looked at, how it impacts our people, because that's what matters most, how it impacts the way that they can or can't do the task, the job, the position agreement that we've agreed with them that they are held accountable to. And then, is it good for the customer? And if we can kind of check all those boxes, then we have a really good story to tell, to our employees in that change management by saying, hey, look, this is why we want to do this. It checks all these boxes for core values, all these boxes for, yes, it's good for the customer. Yes, it's good for you. It aligns with our current processes. And there might be some shifting that we have to do from a process perspective, but it's an alignment. And so, when we take that perspective, it's much deeper than just we're good at change management. It's like a business culture that had to be instilled from, our executive team, and the ownership, years ago to get us to this place. Right. And we're constantly learning. We haven't perfected it. right? But that's what it takes. Is the leadership, the top end of the bottom of the organization, which for us is the bottom. We say that the higher you go, the more people you serve.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so if they take that approach to everything, then it's like, it's not, we're going to jam this down your throat and use it because we say you have to. It's, we've taken you and our customers into consideration along with our core values, and we believe this is the best way to do business. And if we can, and so our people believe in that process from day one, and they learn that process from day one. And so when we then recommunicate a new thing with the why as the purpose, they receive it in that way. And so hopefully, by and large, that's received well.
Yeah, that's that's powerful. It's almost like everybody, the leadership executive team went to a Simon Sinek workshop and started that process. Was there like a particular book that had a huge impact on the culture of the organization?
Yeah, so one of the books is the book Traction. So that was a big leadership book that our group went through. We read Who Moved the Cheese, and also The 1 Minute Manager were all corporate books that we read. I started back even before I was with the group. I found the Simon Sinek video back in 2011, about 2 years after that first TED Talk. And so when I came on board, it was my intention to continue what I believed about that, and so got that injected into the culture. And so all of those were transformational because we listened and read those as a group.
No, that's pretty powerful. I mean, it's pretty impressive, the transformational ability that an idea can have in an organization, and the power of kind of that leadership, the speed of the leaders, the speed of the team, and that the ability of leadership to kind of embody those things and have that transformational process and have the vulnerability and openness to be able to make that change, that cultural change, speaks volumes of what the leadership style is. And can you talk a little bit about the leadership style at the top? What it is, what does it feel like from your position? What are the things that kind of resonate with you and those cultural shifts that you've seen?
Well, here's one for you, and I think this will maybe sum it up, right? Our not all of our executive team, like Mr. Nelson, who's an active owner, is not out of Tennessee, but out of Oklahoma. But when he comes out here, right, and I get to sit down with him or shake his hand or hug his neck, the first thing he asks is not, "Hey, how's business?" or "Hey, how'd the marketing go last month?" or "Hey, how did the CRM change go?" It's "Hey, how's your family? How are you? What's going on in your life?" And, when you get that at a core level, the rest is good.
Yeah.
And that's across the board. So they're like my bosses, the people that I directly work with every single day. That's the first thing. It's not, you don't get back from vacation and everybody goes, "Hey, how part-timer?" It's, "Hey, how was your vacation? Did you shoot a good golf round? What was your best meal?" Right?
Yeah.
And that literally happened to me yesterday. I came back from vacation, and those were the first 3 questions that were asked of me. And not a question of like, "Oh my goodness, things broke last week," or "Things were this, that, and the other," or "How did we miss this?" It was that side. And so, working in an organization like that, you just know that when the question comes of how did the marketing go last week, you're not going to get browbeat for it, And so I hate to boil it down to that, but when that's the culture, that's the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks volumes in its simplicity, right? I mean, the fact that you're more important than anything else in that moment, that the connection of how you are doing personally is more important than anything, because if you're doing well and you're connected and you're rested and you're back, and you had a great time and you had spent time with your family, that's the most important thing. Everything else will fall into its place for work, because that makes almost everything else worth it. You know, that you have a space where you can connect there and then have a meaningful career, and that's what everybody really expects. And I think that in many cases, your passion for the automotive industry is almost a side effect of that connectivity and that meaningfulness, and how much that meaning that you create at your job, because you could, if you were at a place that was not, people focused, right? Or that was focused on profit or whatever that looked like, there wouldn't even be a place for passion to grow at that level. And I think that speaks volumes for the culture of the organization.
Absolutely. And yeah, I get to be a part of that, which is really cool. And we get to be it's cool. Even cooler, our customers get to be a part of that, and they notice it when they walk in the showroom, right? They notice us smiling and enjoying being with each other, and not, scowling at someone for taking the next customer or things like that. It's an environment that's infectious, that goes much beyond just the internal culture. It impacts the external culture. So, but that is, and then, like I said, that impacts our ability to walk our people through change, because they believe that we're for them, and not against them, hopefully. And, we ask that question often, but, by the way that they address those changes, it typically, speaks to that.
Yeah. You part from a place of positive intent, right? Is that if everybody knows that at their core that they want best for the other person, then you can foster a place of collaboration rather than kind of resentment and pulling in different directions. And dude, I'll tell you this, I got super fired up at Digital Dealer after, with your speech and kind of the passion that you brought to the place with, I remember a line that you said is like, I want my daughters, right? You have daughters, right? It's like, I want my kids to be passionate about joining the automotive space. And I was like, man, that hit super, super deep for me. It's like, I love this business so much, and I love the culture of this business so much. And it's like, I want it to be kind of this awesome collaborative place. And I want it to be a place that people want to come to work for. Because I think that enabling people to buy a vehicle is one of the second largest purchase that they can make in their life, and they can functionally change the way that they live their lives through that process. So, I mean, going back to it, is that a place that creates a culture where somebody like you can grow and flourish is a place that I want to be involved with. You know what I mean? And I want to replicate across as many places as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just gotta keep leaving that stamp in all the places that we connect with. This is, we're on the Clubhouse app right now, and this podcast will go out, but whether it touches 10 or 15 or 50 or 500 people in the automotive industry, it's important for us to keep saying these things, and that's important to our organization to lead, to help lead that charge. And there's other incredible automotive organizations out there that are leading and helping lead that charge. But we want to be a big part of that. And that's like I said, a large part due to stuff that was set up well before I got here, and by the leadership and the ownership group that we get to work for.
Yeah, I mean that's and that speaks volumes in kind of everything that we're doing, and how much this pandemic of positivity, the pop, that we're all involved with, and how cool Pitch Tank is, and how constructive it is, and kind of this Clubhouse family that we've created. I think it permeates into everything that we do. I think it's really powerful, and I'm really happy to be a part of this. And obviously, you're the guy that started the Automotive Innovations Room, so and that I'm part of, and I'm really appreciative of that. So, with that said, we're going to move a little bit into Q&A and start doing kind of popcorn. Whoever would like to jump up, just raise your hand and we can start a discussion of the good, the bad, and the ugly on CRM implementations, good best practices. It sounds like from Kyle's kind of description that he hit, I took a class in school that was business systems implementations, and it literally talks about getting buy-in from your team early, bringing them into the decision-making process, supporting them, showing them the why. It seems like you guys just kind of naturally hit all the main targets for a successful implementation, and there's a science behind this. So I'd like to see if we've got some questions and we can hit those up.
And I mean, here's the thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you're going to change a major system like that, there's going to be issues. Like we're I think 2.5 weeks in, we're still checking on data and double checking that it's all in and cleaning up merging and, trying to figure out how our reporting is looking. And we did a mid-month shift, which means that our data is going to be a little wonky this month. And we just have to accept that and know that we're going to still sell cars and hopefully sell more than we ever have. Actually, we're on pace to break records, which is cool. And a lot of people in the automotive industry are that way right now. But yeah, we know that we'll be able to reconcile, and we're working together as a team. I was with one of our BD leads this morning for about 3 hours and just working through, those little issues and those little idiosyncrasies that, we got used to in one system that we've got to figure out and challenge ourselves in ways to work with and work with this new company to kind of find those issues and refine that. So yeah, I mean, it hasn't come without its fair share of heartache. But it was honestly one of the most smooth transitions that we've been able to have in major systems thus far. So it's really neat.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool that you guys did this mid-month, like in the middle of a big month that you're going to have, and you guys still hit your records. I mean, that speaks volumes, right?
Yeah, that's all the team just staying in. Like I just get to be a part of watching them, do incredible work in the midst of change. So I'll give them all the praise for that for sure.
Yeah, that we were talking modern day car sales. The morning meeting is like how much construction benefits sales numbers when you're having a construction project. Is like there's this weird phenomenon when you put a goal or a challenge in front of everybody naturally goes to aim to that thing and says, oh no, we got a construction coming up, so we don't know what the schedule is going to look like, and parking is going to be an issue, and then it kind of pulls everybody together and tightens up the ship. And there's this really cool phenomenon of that happening, and I wish that every day was kind of that phenomenon of things tightening up and aiming towards a goal and everybody rowing in the same direction and not kind of marred by the day-to-day BS that pulls us in different directions that are just kind of distractions. So it's really interesting that phenomenon happens with a CRM implementation as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's get some guys on the stage. Guys have any questions for Kyle about, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly on QA, Q&A for CRM implementations?
Yeah, I got a question for you, Kyle. Gray mentioned this morning in Modern Day Car Sales about partnering with vendors that are innovative and bringing new things. How much of the process when you guys are evaluating CRM, was it innovation from what they were bringing to the table that could improve your process, and opposed to the percentage of the decision that was, we're looking for a tool that will fit our process?
Yeah, for us, it was probably more leaned, and this is kind of my theory on the majority of tech, is that we start with process and add tech to it, right? Because we've got to start with the customer, build a process around how they need to be served, and then ensure that tech supports that. So that was probably a larger percentage of it. There's definitely a desire in our group to be on the leading edge of not just process, but also technology. So there's we're always looking for that. Like that's one of my primary roles is to just always be looking out for what's new technology that could potentially support something new or that we could adjust our processes for. But in this particular instance, it was a lot around this heartache of like, okay, we're doing all these things. We believe it should be all in one system and it should be easy to use and good for the dealership user. And so let's see if we can find that. And so that was probably the larger, I would probably say 60 to 70% of the decision-making process was in trying to align technology with the current processes that we had in-house and reduce logins and increase efficiency. We didn't have to, in this transition, we didn't have to actually change process really outside of just changing where the process happened. So that was our unique situation in this. And probably if I was going to say anything that we do is if the technology requires us to change a process, then we probably need to backtrack first and figure out if it's actually the right process. And then if we've been presented with a technology that requires us to do that, we probably need to look at multiple to make sure that we are not just changing process for a technology, if that makes sense.
So was there anything in the technology that they presented that you guys looked at and said, man, we need to add that to our process? That is like mind blowing.
Honestly, not really. I think. So one thing that we hadn't thought of prior was we also changed phone systems at the same time, and the phone system that that was actually recommended by the CRM company allowed us to have individual agent texting and call lines. So the majority of phone call providers that have integrations with CRMs can get you down to individual agent lines now. Over the last 12 months, they've all kind of moved that way. And we didn't realize that you could get to the point of individual agent and text lines that were dealership owned. And so instead of it just looking like a single text thread with multiple people engaged, it could be multiple people engaging with the customer in the same platform from an individual agent line perspective. And we felt like that's a really good customer experience. So that was exciting for us as we made the leap as well.
All right. Thomas, you had something for us?
I did. As someone who has done a couple of implementations and installs myself, I'm watching your journey, Kyle, fairly closely and want to see how this goes over the next 3 months, mainly because I am stepping out of the dealership and going out on my own, and I've been asked by a couple of dealer groups to consult, specifically on CRM and different companies. I did speak to Steve Rossler the other day at length, and I haven't been through a complete product demo with his system yet, but I will at some point. But I'd really like to see, especially with your analytical mind, how this goes over the next 90 days.
Well, here's what I'll tell you. A 10-day over 10-day on activity, plus 40% texts, flat on calls, plus 50% emails activity. And so
when you say activity stats, when you say activity, these are activities performed by end users?
Sorry, say that again. Something broke.
These are activities performed by end users?
Yep. So activities performed by dealership users have increased that much. really about flat. If you take into consideration the two stores, about flat on leads, phone calls, like inbound leads. So to see that much more activity happening across the systems. Also about a 20% increase in video sent. So we were doing all of those things in multiple platforms prior, whether it be CRM or video platform or texting platform. And so now all in one, and we're seeing a massive uptick in activity. And I don't have the exact appointment data yet because that's one place where I'm struggling with reporting right now. But based on volume of people, I do know volume of people in the door has increased. I just don't know. I've only been back from vacation one day, so give me a break. But I don't know what the appointment data on that is yet. But
no breaks.
I do know that
no breaks
activity is
up. No breaks for you. No soup for you. No. Well, you were on Vince Solutions prior, right?
Correct.
Okay. I can tell you just from, with the dealer group I was just currently with that, just bringing, hey, you can do this. The this being the text messaging and video with an app and showing them how easy it is to do. I mean, that alone jumped up 50-60%. Text messaging for one, and then secondly was video usage. But yeah, I'm just curious to kind of watch your journey.
Can I jump in for a quick second? I just have a question. I came here late. What is the new technology and company that Kyle switched to?
So we went from Vin Solutions to Drive-Centric CRM.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I guess the big question is like, for me, this is there's this math equation that happens when we do CRMs. It's like, if you're on a CRM that's kind of middle of the pack, and you're not using it properly, and you don't have the necessary processes in place to make sure that it's as effective as possible, changing CRMs is going to do nothing. It's going to be the same exact place. And that's where the weapons don't make the warrior kind of mentality comes from. But if you're very effective and have the processes in place, and Kyle kind of hinted at this when he said, it wasn't really the process that changed, is where they were doing it that changed. There's an increase and an increase in horsepower that happens just through tuning and getting a new tool. So I think that in some of these cases, just moving to a CRM isn't the answer. It's building the scaffolding, and Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong here, but building the scaffolding and processes and people and the culture, and then adding an effective CRM on top of that. It seems like it's a winning formula for high levels of effectiveness.
Yeah, that's it. I think you nailed it. It's if the technology is the solution, then we've got a problem.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I had a conversation the other day, and I said, well, what's your process? Do you have in writing? And who's holding them who's holding who accountable for the process? Not the weapon, but the warrior.
Not the weapon, but the warrior. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thomas, you know how it is.
Love that saying, John. Love it. Love it, brother.
So Kyle, if you had to do it, I'll ask you a question here. If you had to do it all over again, what were some blind spots that, even with all the preparation in the world, that you guys wish you would have known, asked, that you have fresh in your minds, that I would have tweaked this thing, and do this a little bit different or better, or do you think that you hit everything kind of with an appropriate level of force and knocked everything out?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I would have done differently is the way we cleaned the data prior to the exit and inspected the data. It was actually, and this wasn't as much on us, although I think I could have done a little bit more. But it was the way that just trying to understand the way the data was coming from the old system to the new system. It could have potentially helped me in the way that I equipped, and maybe this is like maybe more the CRM's job to understand how they can map certain fields and certain data and ensure that it comes in well. That it just felt like it felt like I could have got a better grasp on that potentially, and maybe done that a little bit better. Also, with this, I would have the one thing that we missed was really getting our process and our business rules dialed in. And I think that the biggest hurdle specifically with this transition from VIN Solutions to DriveCentric was that the way that DriveCentric does task management is much more driven by not lead type, but stage type, and then not task type, but touch point. And I wish I would have had, and we could have made this happen. I wish we would have had and gotten our hands on more of thinking through those business rules, because we've had to shift them a lot over the last 2 weeks to align them more with the way we wanted to communicate with customers. And I think if we would have really thought through how that would work, we would have been better equipped those first 5 to 7 days. We lost some ground in just, we were missing some modes of communication because we were leaning a little bit too much on certain types of communication at different stages within their deal flow. So that sort of mapping and that sort of change in understanding of how to connect with customers is maybe something that some of us in the room, that either have watched or listened to people move to DriveCentric, or maybe DriveCentric needs to just work through. Maybe I'll talk to Steve about that, is just doing a better job at educating on how that might impact the way you've done business rules in the past and how you're doing business rules now, because it's a definite change in mentality from the 4 other CRMs that I've ever worked in.
And is that like a shift in almost the arc of the customer life cycle? It's like one approaches it from a stage perspective rather than approaching it from a lead type perspective. Is that do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, it's like a shopper journey perspective than an acquisition perspective, right? And so it's different touch points along the way in that. And then also, they have, a lot of other CRMs would just call this a task, but they have the ability to create a touch point, which can be completed by any of 4. You can set it up to be any of 4 or 2 out of the 4, 3 out of the 4, depending on the type of touch point that you want to have them complete. So it's not just like a call task here and an email task here. It's like you need to complete a touch point, which is great from a perspective of if your people are paying attention to how that customer is communicating best. But if you still want, if your business mentality is still, hey, we still need to get a phone call out on day 1 and not just text, you've got to create either multiple tasks or multiple touch points to encourage that with good notes. And so that was just a learning curve that we had to make from a management perspective was, oh gosh, we've created all these touch points, but we want to make sure these actual tasks also happen alongside of that at different points during the customer journey.
And is there, I haven't been in a CRM in a little while, but are there almost like effective rates, like, touch points or points of contact versus responses to the customers? Like how do those, are those equations that are in the CRM, or is that, it's like how effective are your touch points per responses and kind of your engagement rate rather than it being, blasting them with information and hoping that they call back at some point?
Yeah, that's the major thing that that DriveCentric is trying to solve. They're trying to present you with, hey, this worked well, this didn't work well. They essentially like if you send, they can show you sent 3 emails and they turn it red, like they never responded to that. You sent 2 texts, they responded to 1, that's a yellow. You called 4 times, they picked up every single one, that's a green, right? So live and call. And I'm just giving examples, but they're able to show that just based on terms of engagement from a customer perspective.
It's almost like, what is effective versus what's not. It's almost like a lean methodology to approach every single customer. It's like you create a hypothesis, you deploy it, get feedback, and then change based on that, and you do that with every single customer. Seems like a smart way to do it, right?
Yeah. The question is do you have people that are diligent enough to try all 4 ways, really? And so that's where we missed. We had to still make them try all the ways, right? Was the initial miss that we had.
Hey, Kyle, the stuff that you were missing in a CRM that you did not have, did you go to Vin Solutions and say, hey guys, we would like to see this, and if you don't have this or you can't provide it, we're going to shop around and look for something else?
So to be fair, Vin has a texting solution. They obviously have calling and emailing, like click to calling and emailing, and they have a video solution. For us, they just weren't up to par. With what we had that we were using outside of it, it wouldn't have given us the customer or user experience that we were after. So we looked at both of those. Yeah.
Hey, Kyle, when they did your data extract, I'm sure they took DMS data as well as CRM data, and typically you have it cleaned and matched against various databases. And then you said something about they didn't match up fields. Elaborate on that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, so just because, and more particularly, more particularly from the CRM, not from the DMS. It's a lot more simple from a data perspective, honestly. It was CRM fields that were, because, the intentionality and drive is much more in these stages. Some of that didn't match up, and so we had a lot bucketed in weird places. And so the initial task load was in the wrong type of task load. And then also things like some of the ways that service data came over was kind of interesting. That was from the DMS. That I would have never been able to do anything about that. So we have, if anyone's ever going to do it, we have DealerTrack DMS and essentially a bunch of service RO data with open ROs and open appointments came in looking like they were new leads because they were essentially new customers. And I honestly, I don't know whether that came over because Vin Solutions houses CRM data in that way. And so I don't know if that kind of condensed from the CRM or from the DMS. I don't know where that data field came from. I'm guessing from the CRM. But that was a problem where we had to kind of mass clear that stuff once it was in DriveCentric.
Well, we can probably take this offline. I can maybe walk you through a few things as far as data and where it comes from and that kind of thing. I don't want to take up too much time on that here, but brother, whatever I can do to help, let me know.
I do have a question on the data side, Kyle. Just to elaborate a little bit on that, is how did you guys prep for cleaning the data and making sure that data was mapped to the right fields on the exporting side? Did you have a team that was separating, the 30,000 clients or 100,000 clients that you guys had over the life of, the auto group? how did you guys attack that, and how did you guys approach it, and how did you prep for the import into a new CRM?
So we don't have our own data layer, which is something that I've been looking at for a while, which I would love to have. But honestly, the majority of the cleanup that we did was just in clearing out like old tasks, deals that should be marked kind of dead so that they didn't restart tasks within the new system looking like they were open. Ensuring that DMS matching was correct to any sold deals that were in there, so that we knew that the customer data files, when they came through, would be matched as well. And I think that's the majority of the stuff that we did. And like I said, we didn't from just a customer match perspective, we didn't have a whole bunch of, duplicates where the DMS data and the CRM data wasn't matching up or things like that. I mean, literally month to date, our sold records are literally 1-to-1. So that's, you can't ask much more than that.
Typically, your ultimate database is your DMS, and you have a connection typically, if not real time, with your DMS, depending on the DMS and the level of integration. You'll have real time data, especially if and when and what you're using out in the service drive. And typically it goes through a data clearinghouse where they verify, that this person lives at this address and this is an actual good email, phone number, things like that. It goes to a match database, whether it's CRM data or DMS data. Typically, DMS data is clean because they do that usually once a quarter.
Kyle, and I had a kind of a final question since we're wrapping up here. We're getting at the top of the hour. I had one more question on the dealer side. Did you guys have a lead, a project manager, or somebody that was kind of in charge of this whole transition, soup to nuts?
So that was me. Yep.
Yeah, that was kind of a loaded question, because I know that I know that a lot of the success of how the implementation is probably due to the fact that you were leading it and that they had somebody that was designated to do it soup to nuts. And I can't stress how important that is, to have one person that is kind of the champion of this thing and that can Sherpa, the organization through this process. And not everybody has that. And I, encourage, as kind of a best practice of any implementation or new effort that the organization has, that they designate one person to be the Sherpa of it and lead it through, see it all the way through, pre-implementation, implementation, post-implementation, that has the connection with the vendor directly, and that can be that one throat to choke that has the power and authority to do things, to make the calls. I think that's critical. A lot of the times these projects are almost doomed from Jump Street because it doesn't have that empowerment in it, and it shows to the not full commitment of the organization to change. And embracing and driving change kind of was sparked in my belly as a fire after I read Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, and that's a core value that Zappos had, and I was kind of blew my mind to see that an organization would think that, be so forward thinking to take that. And I'm glad to see that kind of transitioning into the automotive space, and you guys doing such a good job of taking this huge opportunity of a CRM change and increasing the effective rate of the organization. I applaud you guys for that.
Hey guys,
You're right.
I have a quick question for Kyle. My name is Ryan. I'm from Toronto, Canada. You guys have your salespeople meet customers when they're in for their appointment, to do a touch appraisal, to build a quote, maybe in a new car, have that point of contact with their already existing customer, or with another, say a service drive champion, to greet that customer and just see if there's anything they could do to help.
Sorry, ask that a little bit differently?
Sorry. So what I'm asking is, does your sales team meet customers when they're in for their service drive appointment, when they're getting their car maintenance? Are you guys offering a complimentary touch appraisal? Are you guys offering to build a quote on a new car, trying to keep them in your database? Make them feel important. One thing I learned from one of my mentors, he said, a customer will always forget what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah, that's attributed to Maya Angelou, I think. Yeah. But yeah, that is something we do. We actually utilize, we start that touch point with our purchasing team. So the people that are a team that's dedicated to purchasing customer vehicles, which makes it much more, of a soft touch for sure.
Okay.
All right, I think we have time for one more question for Mr. Kyle on CRM post-mortem implementations, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we'll be wrapping it up here in a couple minutes. Ian, you had something?
Yeah, hey guys. Kyle, I know with CRM, I understand that garbage in and garbage out. What did you guys do, or how did you set up the team for quality information going in? Like, did you use a template and precisely tell them sort of a frame of what you wanted? Because if you leave it open-ended, they just put whatever they want into it. Sorry, go ahead.
I think I get your question. So, there's really only three ways four ways that someone gets into, that a customer gets into the CRM.
Mm-hmm.
So first is through an internet inquiry, and so we're able to track that. Second is through a phone call, and we're able to track that with the phone system provider integration, because that's all pushed in the system, so we can inspect that. The third way is through our showroom system. So we actually employ greeters, what we call a showroom coordinator. That's much more mobile. That's ensuring that every single person is getting entered into our showroom system, which is, for those that don't know, we're a single point of contact store. So the customer has to be in there for them to do anything, essentially. So that has an API connection with the CRM, so it goes in there. And then the final way would be anyone that they get from like a personal referral or anything like that. So that's on them. If they're communicating with a customer, then they put it in there. But we have a culture that emphasizes that. So those are the four ways that it goes in. And then we have team leads that are dedicated to particular parts of our team that are always inspecting their CRM work, notes, all that type of stuff. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I mean, it's more directed to, like, for that concierge person you're talking about at the front, like, do you guys have specific points that they need to ask to get direct and very specific information? Because you can talk about anything and everything, and she might or he might put all of that in, which is not necessary, right? Is all I'm getting at. So I'm just wondering if there was kind of a specific questions or certain guidelines that you guys use to derive to that key information.
Yeah, so when entering a customer, we say, what's your name? And then we say, what's the best email to send you extremely important information about your potential vehicle purchase? And then we say on the phone number, and what's the best way to reach you in the day in case something important comes up? And then we ask, may I text that number? And so you're going to get that out of it. But it starts before that, because as long as you have a really, really strong, initial interaction and the customer, you have to build trust, and then you get the right information, and then all of a sudden the information in is correct, right? And if you do it in a digital form instead of like writing it on a notepad, right, which is normally, when I was selling cars, I had this little notepad that I kept in my pocket that I would pull out and I'd write everything on. And I think I got a lot of wrong numbers because people were like, well, where's that piece of paper going to go? Right. So everything's digital for us.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, guys. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for DealerTech Tuesdays. Kyle, if you can let everybody know how to get in contact with you if they have any questions. I know Contagious, the Contagious Auto is very powerful podcast. So if you can let everybody know how to get in contact with you, I think that would be a great way to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think just a direct message on LinkedIn is probably the easiest way, or Kyle at contagiousauto.com. Everything else you have to spell my last name, so which it comes hard for a lot of people. But other than that, definitely please connect if you have questions. I'd be glad to help out or answer any of them that I can.
All right, last names. You can't even compete on the last name thing.
Fair, quite fair, Tom.
We got some tongue twisters out there. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming on. We'll see everybody next Tuesday, same time, same channel.